An old school RuneScape subscription, $5 a month. Diablo 4, $70. Buying an ultra wide monitor so you can get an advantage in Lost Ark, $200. It costs a lot of money to develop a good MMO, hundreds of millions of dollars, and many years of development. So it's not surprising that developers and publishers who work on these games aggressively monetize their games to actually gain a profit after all that investment. But it also doesn't create much profit if your game is too expensive to garner enough of an audience to play it due to a steep entry cost. Buy-to-play games like Black Desert Online and Guild Wars 2 only need you to pay once, and you have access to those features of the game until the servers go down. Subscription model games like Final Fantasy XIV or World of Warcraft require monthly payments to allow you to continue to play the game. Free-to-play games like Lost Ark and Star Wars: The Old Republic often monetize with microtransactions through a cash shop that is separate from the actual gameplay systems, where players can optionally pay for in-game advantages, conveniences, or appearances. Buy-to-play games may be the fairest option, but they don't promote an active player base because giving players the choice to play whenever they want means they're also free to quit playing and the game's activity suffers. Subscription models force players to play their game to get value out of their money spent, which can be a steep barrier to getting players into the game, but the players who do play it are usually active, which feels more alive. Free-to-play has the least barrier of entry, making it appeal to wider audiences, but the emphasis on microtransactions may alienate players who want to feel like they have a fair chance. Each method has its benefits and trade-offs or appeals to a different audience, and that's why many MMOs will use a combination of these methods. They'll offer you a free-to-play trial before you need to buy the game or start paying a subscription, or they will offer you a cash shop to give more conveniences to players on top of their already existing monetization methods. And that's because every MMO wants to get as many potential customers as possible by having as little barrier of entry as possible without revealing the full nature of the game systems, which may be too convoluted or unfair for some to enjoy. When players no longer feel in control of their character or have the freedom to do what they want, they quit the game. It could be that the game's balance doesn't reward them for playing the class that they have fun playing. There's too much mandatory grind which they don't have the time to sit through, or the game may just be pay to win in their eyes. The reason I say in their eyes is because there's a lot of disagreement on what is pay to win. There can be level boosts in the cash shop, better gear you can gain by using currency you can only purchase with real life money, or extra inventory slots that allow you to farm more efficiently, but only if you pay up. And as soon as your game is labeled as pay to win, it can be an immediate turn off for many. But you'll often hear players who are fine with some pay to win elements say it's more like pay for convenience or pay for skipping the grind. And that's because there is no absolute threshold for when a game becomes pay to win. It's up to you to decide what winning is to you, and to what extent winning is reasonably within reach of you. So in this video, I want to explore what the true threshold for a game being pay to win is, and if that even matters. We all know that time is money, and saying that you can spend time in game grinding to get anything that someone can purchase with real life money is not equivalent. Let's use the analogy of a commercial airline flight. If someone pays for a first class seat, they definitely have an advantage. They get on and off the flight sooner than someone in coach. They get a nice meal, so they don't need to go get food after they get off the plane. And they have a more luxurious ride, which means they probably won't be so exhausted when they get off. Yes, they get to the same place as someone who's riding in the back seats, but they have clear advantages. And if you get a private jet, you can go anywhere anytime you want without going through customs, which has even greater advantages. And of course, the price point for that is way out of reach for most people. MMOs are much more affordable than private jets, but when your time is equivalent to money, and the game lets you exchange your in real life currency for in-game currency to skip content or earn rewards, you will eventually start questioning whether it's worth it to actually grind or to just get a job and then pay your way. Here's the problem with that. If you look at it as a time or money equation, it will almost always be better to go work at minimum wage and then pay instead of grind. But at that point, why are you even playing the game? Most people don't play games just to become the strongest or for self-improvement. They do it to relax after they get home from work. Sure, you can get some fulfillment from progressing your character or reaching a higher rating, but you can decide what is your win condition. If you can't afford a first-class ticket, but you just want to zone out and listen to an audiobook on the flight, you'll probably have a great time still. Likewise, many MMO players don't care if others can skip the grind when they can just focus on their own progression while watching streams or YouTube videos on their second monitor. It's generally not a problem until you become competitive. If you're flying coach because you want to make a business deal in another place, the guy with the private jet is going to get there much faster and make the deals before you. While most players really don't care about pay to win because they don't need to compete to have fun or would rather experience the game than skip it, there are still many players who get their fun from competition. And when these players label a game pay to win, it can often affect players who generally wouldn't care because you need a diverse audience in your game for it to feel alive. You need casual and competitive players. If you're trying to compete, then most MMOs are pay to win to an extent. If you can afford to pay someone with real world currency to progress your character by carrying you or giving you the items you need, then that is also paying to win. This is why gold selling and account sharing is often against the terms of service in most online games. But when the company providing you the product is the one selling in-game advantages or allowing you to convert real currency for in-game currency, then what do? It really depends on how much those reward systems are affected by the pay-to-win elements. For example, in Black Desert Online, you have plenty of pay-to-win elements, but the point of the game is to grind, and you can do that regardless of how convenient it's made by how much you spend. Even though PvP in BDO is affected by the pay-to-win as well, the open world PvP is relatively optional due to the repercussions created by the karma system. Gankers often get punished or need to work more to keep up while having negative karma. This means you don't necessarily need to fight someone who is more geared than you, and this is why Black Desert Online is still one of the top MMOs despite being one of the most pay-to-win MMOs. Yes, your accomplishments may be diminished by others who have better gear that they may have obtained through pay-to-win, but the gameplay is still fun. The sandbox open world allows players to split up and find many ways of reaching the same goals, and you may not even know or care that others are paying to win. Now in games like World of Warcraft and Guild Wars 2, where you can pay third parties to play with you and boost you through raids or get you higher rating in PvP, these are all technically legal, but still devalue the rewards for everybody else. In World of Warcraft, you need a certain level of gear to be reasonably equipped to fight a specific boss encounter. So you want to start out in dungeons first to get enough gear to be able to do raids, then farm the raids enough to get enough gear to do the hard mode of those raids to get you the best gear. If you were to join a group that you were not geared enough for, you could get loot that is way ahead of your current progression and therefore skip the entire gear treadmill that the game design puts you through. And this is also evident in horizontal progression games like Guild Wars 2 because raid selling is also a business where you just bring along a few people who pay to get carried. You don't get better loot necessarily because you can get the same level of gear from more casual content. However, many experienced groups in raids will ask for proof that you've killed an encounter to be accepted in them. While this isn't the best indicator for skill or experience, it generally shows time investment, which translates to experience, and is the most efficient way to ensure your group knows what they're doing. But if someone buys carries to get the kill proof they need to join a group, then they wouldn't be nearly as experienced as the rest of the group expects them to be. It's still possible to not buy any raids, have tons of kill proof, and be bad at the game or not know the mechanics, but you can still see where pay to win can become a problem here, where players who may be experienced and skilled enough may feel unable to prove they are, since they don't have the arbitrary amount of kill proof and feel the need to buy their way into a group. Or players who don't have the expected amount of skill get into the group anyway because they paid to win. The same applies to PvP boosts. Starting out can be rough because competitive players don't want to play with noobs. So if you just pay for a boost, then you can finally get the recognition you deserve, right? There are many ways this problem can be addressed. Players can just take their time and go at their own pace without feeling the need to complete the hardest content immediately. They can just settle for doing dungeons if they aren't good enough to do raids, or they can just play in low rating PvP matches and do their best. After all, you get the same content as those with higher ratings, you just have much more room left for your progression. While these are good solutions for the player to take into their own hands, expecting players to find their own enjoyment in your product is not the most reliable way for developers to get them to become return customers, especially when people use games as a way to blow off steam when they have spent most of their self-control during their day jobs. To make the most money, game devs want to provide a place for all kinds of people, so they want to have pay to win while not leading people to believe it is pay to win or obscuring the effects of the pay to win elements. As soon as your MMO is labeled as pay to win, it turns many players off to it, even if those pay to win elements are necessary, or the game can still be fun or rewarding regardless of them. So how do developers make their MMO not feel pay to win or minimize its effect on the community while still allowing players to give them money? Seasons are one way that MMOs invite new players into their game, despite having very long progression systems that can be impossible to catch up to without paying a hefty sum. This can include new servers to give all players a fresh start, or servers that reset every so often with increased experience gains. If your game is fun and has social aspects to it, then players shouldn't care about starting the process over. This is why classic World of Warcraft has seen a lot of success. The leveling process is fun, but when everyone has been max level for a while and their progression is tied to a single raid, they no longer go out and explore the world. It results in players wanting to catch up by paying for boosting services or a max level boost, but they're just rushing to complete the game because that's where everyone else is. Also, Black Desert Online's seasonal servers are generally great for players who want a fair playing field because there is much less incentive for players to invest real money in characters that are not permanently on those servers. And even when an MMO provides many alternatives to paying to win, it may not be enough to clean the image that players create in their heads. Games that we thought were extremely fair and skill-based can have an underground economy devaluing the rewards of the game, and those that have an openly monetized progression system can provide long-term meaningful character progression. When we try to simplify things as much as possible, we don't reach beyond the surface level, and players get disgruntled with things that aren't really the problem, they just appear to be. This is why bots can be really bad for the game. Sure, they may not be able to compete at the highest levels or have much effect on the economy, but they're a physical representation of pay to win in your game. If someone can get rewarded for having software play their character while they're AFK or at work or on vacation, why should you put effort into playing the game? Why don't you just use third-party software to make money with little effort? The people using these bots may even be selling the gold for real-world currency, which makes the game more pay to win. Even if the bots are only able to do low-yield farms and marginally affect the game's economy, it ruins the fun and feeling of being rewarded for many, which is the exact same consequence of someone who realizes a game is pay to win. That's why many of the new Korean MMOs coming out this year, like Blue Protocol and Throne and Liberty, are giving Western audiences doubts, because usually Eastern MMOs have more aggressive monetization and they have features like auto battle which promote botting. Many will just dismiss these games as pay to win and not even try them, even though they might end up enjoying them and finding meaningful and rewarding experiences in those games. So while pay to win is not something we can easily define or get rid of, there are ways to overcome it by finding your own way to win, not chasing what others tell you to value. And if you do want to compete, then take your time and don't rush to be the best immediately. If the game is still not for you, then find another, but just know that all MMOs exist within the real world, which is very much pay to win, with imbalanced starting options and businesses competing to make their products sell the most. Does pay to win really matter? It does, because it can make it harder for you to immerse yourself in your character's progression, but at the end of the day, it's under your control. And you can control whether you see more of this content if you enjoyed it by subscribing and liking the video. If you'd like to support me further, you can click the link in the description below to become a patron. A big thank you to all of my patrons who help my content become pay to win, and I'll see you all next time.